Ryan Hoff, Director of Government Relations for the Association of Indiana Counties. Since the end of last legislative session, I've had many conversations with our membership about how the landscape is changing in the electric utility industry. This obviously has had a big impact on some counties where electric generation facilities that have been in place for decades are closing. It's also had a big impact in other counties where new electric generation facilities are being developed, including renewable generation. With all this going on, we've asked our counterparts at the Indiana Energy Association to provide some information for our members describing the changes in the electric utility industry. With us today virtually is the Vice President of the IEA, Mindy Westrick Brown, who provides their outlook on the future of energy production in Indiana. Mindy, take it away.
Hi, I'm Mindy Westrick Brown, Vice President of the Indiana Energy Association, and today I have the privilege of presenting on Indiana's future of electric generation, a decade of diversification. A little bit about me before we get started. I have served as Vice President of the IEA for almost 2 years now, and before that I spent 11 years at the law firm that's now known as Faegre Drinker in the Government Advocacy Department. And a little bit about the IEA before we get started. We have 14 members. They are listed on your screen, investor-owned utilities and a public charitable trust. I know these maps are hard to see, but you have the electric service territory map, as well as I thought it would be interesting to see the natural gas service territory map. We have 5 electric members, 11 natural gas companies. And if you're doing the math, you're like, that doesn't add up to 14. It's because 2 of those are combination companies having both electric and natural gas service. I'll point out on the electric service territory map, and again, I know these are hard to see. If you want to see them close up, they are available on our website at indianaenergy.org. But you have AES Indiana, formerly Indianapolis Power and Light, serving central Indiana in the purple. You have NIPSCO in the navy blue, serving northern Indiana. Indiana Michigan Power in the yellow, serving northeast Indiana, as well as parts of St. Joseph County and nearby counties. Duke Energy Indiana is in the green, serving parts of 69 counties. And then CenterPoint in the southwest in the royal blue, formerly Vectren, serving Hoosiers in the south. The map probably really should look like Swiss cheese for the electric service territory because there are more than just investor-owned utilities here in Indiana. There are also municipal utilities and rural electric cooperatives. And so the IEA has membership of the investor-owns. The IEC is the trade association for the rural electric cooperatives. They have 38 member cooperatives in the state of Indiana. And IMPA, Indiana Municipal Power Agency, serves wholesale power to 61 different communities across Indiana. So that's a little bit of a makeup of the types of providers here in Indiana. Now, our members, the investor-owned utilities, are regulated completely by the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, known as the IURC. This slide has a little bit about kind of what types of permission and certificates we need related to generation. And so our electric utilities go to the commission when they're looking to build, buy, or lease new generation. And then if the commission approves that, they grant what is called a CPCN, a Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity. And this is due to the fact that each of the service territories have unique service territories. And so only one investor-owned utility will serve that area. And so that's why they're highly regulated by the IURC. A little bit about integrated resource plans. So you'll hear those called IRPs. And that's definitely part of the development process about what the future of generation needs to look like. And so it's the utility's responsibility to map out adequate resources for future obligations. And we have a responsibility to deliver safe, reliable, and efficient electricity at just and reasonable rates. And so we use state-of-the-art tools and modeling with stakeholder input to develop the IRPs, which we'll talk a little bit more about in the coming slides. So the utilities are going to look at a wide range of alternatives and going to model out 20 years. They are on a staggered schedule. So a utility will submit a different IRP every 3 years, but not all the utilities will submit the same IRP on that same schedule. And they're going to look at traditional resources, energy efficiency, demand response, consumer-owned resources over that 20-year period. And so forecasting different scenarios every 3 years. There is robust public input on this as well. So each of the utilities is going to have a number of public stakeholder meetings. They are going to go over the different scenarios and take input and talk about reliability, economics, and other factors of interest. They're also going to have dedicated web pages where customers can find information about this input and help with the planning process. We talked a little bit about the tools and the modeling, but some of the factors we thought would be interesting to kind of lay out. So they're going to look at both strong economies, weak economies, and differences in what the projections might look like. They're going to model different commodity prices. So we know, let's see, like 15 years ago, gas prices were high. They're much lower now. They'll look at commodity prices for coal and natural gas. They'll look at environmental regulations, what is currently here, what we might expect, and model different scenarios to take those all into consideration. Potential plant retirement, so aging facilities, announcements that may be coming in the future will be modeled out as well. Cost drivers. So we've seen the costs for both renewables and natural gas decrease over a number of years. And for renewables, that cost decline is really, we've seen more efficient technology. We've seen economies of scale. We have more experienced developers that have done more projects, larger projects, both here in the state of Indiana as well as in other places, and federal subsidies that have helped drive the cost of renewables down. We've also seen the cost of natural gas decrease, and that's due in part to record output, more efficient methods of extraction, and an abundant supply. And so we know we can expect those prices to continue to go down. Related to that, I thought it might be interesting to see a chart. So according to the National Renewable Energy Laboratories, since 2010, there has been an 82% reduction in the cost of utility scale solar systems. And so that's what your you're seeing with this chart in front of you, kind of showing those that decrease, and they've noted on their chart that there have been and some efficiencies that have been gained, as well as lower cost of hardware and inverters. Next, we'll talk a little bit about reliability. So we know that Hoosiers want the lights to turn on when they flip that switch. We know that businesses want to be able to operate and have power to do so, and the utilities are responsible for that at the end of the day. However, there are other entities that are monitoring, collecting surveys, reports, filings to ensure resource adequacy. And they play a critical role in this. And so we've listed some of those organizations out there. Are the regional transmission organizations looking at resource adequacy and reliability. You have FERC and NERC as well. And then the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, the IURC. And I would just mention there was a bill from the 2021 session. It was House Bill 1520. Dealing with resource adequacy and reliability. And so starting this year, it'll actually be a filing in the spring. The utilities will report out to the IURC on exactly this topic. And if the IURC finds a shortage, they can order the utilities to look for new generation. We also know that Indiana is diversified, continues to become more diversified, has an all of the above approach to energy. And so that means that we have coal, natural gas, nuclear, wind, and solar, as well as an increase in battery technology. And so we've seen that diversification. In the next couple of slides, we'll kind of walk through that. But a lot of that's driven by the economics of and new efficiencies and advanced technology that Indiana has positioned Indiana well. So now we'll walk through some of the different types of resources and the benefits to each one. You'll also see on these slides the generation mix currently in Indiana. So coal is currently at 57.3%, and is reliable, allows the plants to operate 24/7, 365. The utilities have also invested in technology to aid in controlling emissions. And so that's allowed the plants to keep running through their useful life. And we have existing fleet of coal plants that are still in use here in Indiana. Natural gas is next at 27.9% of the generation mix here in Indiana. And so again, natural gas is extremely reliable. The plants are able to complement wind and solar when those resources aren't producing, and natural gas plants have a lot of flexibility on when they can run to support what's needed here in Indiana. Natural gas is also the cleanest burning fuel and capable of future conversions to other alternative fuel sources in the coming years. And we have an abundant supply here in Indiana. So we know that we are tagged as the crossroads of America. And that not only means our road infrastructure, but we have a number of pipelines crossing Indiana. And so getting the natural gas to serve Indiana is rather easy here in the Hoosier State. Next, we have nuclear. And so Indiana is served by a nuclear facility that's actually located in Michigan and owned by Indiana Michigan Power and serving Indiana. You'll see nuclear's reliability statistics here that they were able to operate at full power 92% 2% of the time, making it the most reliable source on the current grid. You'll also know that nuclear plants produce emission-free energy and have a long lifespan, so can run 40 to 60 years or longer, and they're at 9.7% of the generation mix here in Indiana. Next, we have renewables and storage, currently at 5.8% of the generation mix here. There's a lot of room for growth, and we're seeing a lot of growth here with projects in the queue and continuing to be discussed in the IRPs for the next 20 years. And so we have wind and solar and battery technology here, again, producing emission-free energy, cost efficiency. So there is the initial investment, but they don't require fuel and minimal maintenance. So that's another bonus factor about renewables. And then they're becoming increasingly accessible as well. For a little bit of comparison, this is a 2020 chart from Lazard, a highly reputable organization, of the levelized cost of different fuels. And you'll see that wind and solar are among the cheapest. But I would also note that while this comparison is good for a number of reasons, there are other benefits to other fuels that warrant investment. And this kind of touches on the all of the above approach, and the diversification is key. Some of those factors that we discussed in the previous slides about the fuel choices kind of warrant investment in those resources. We've talked a lot about it, but here's a comparison of Indiana's generation portfolio from 2010 to 2019. The 2020 numbers will be out later this fall, and we'll be able to update you all at that time. But you can see the big increase with natural gas as well as with the renewables. So we'll talk a little bit more about the benefits of diversification. So assists with affordability and reliability, two of the most important factors. It also helps kind of protect when there may be a supply issue or one of the generation sources is unavailable. We see states across the country becoming less diversified, and so there is an increased risk for market conditions, extreme weather, and other outages as we've seen across the country. Here you'll see a 10-year forecast starting in 2021 through 2030, and you'll see that we've got lots of growth with renewables, mostly in solar in the yellow, as well as an increase with gas as well. A little bit about our current ranking. So we're 12th nationwide in the amount of wind capacity installed in 2019 with 2,317 megawatts. We're also ranked 23rd nationally for solar power generation in 2019 with just over 475 megawatts. Definitely expect the solar number to grow in the coming years with all of the projects that we expect to see in Indiana. Talk a little bit more about some of the statistics that you might find interesting. So these are long-term plans for the future of energy. So in the next 5 to 7 years, we expect $4 billion to be invested in the aging infrastructure modernization and new development. We've got some statistics here about coal retirement. So expect 7.7 gigawatts of coal to retire by 2028. And that's what's been announced in the IRP. So that's 29% of the 2019 summer capacity for all of the resources. And the reasons for that vary, but include the age of the facility, efficiency of the facility, and compliance measures. All of that's taken into consideration, part of the IRP and part of the announcements of the retirement. And then for replacement, we've got it being replaced by natural gas, solar, and wind by 2030. You'll see the numbers on your screen. Natural gas at 3.3 gigawatts, solar energy at 4.8 gigawatts, and wind energy at 1.6 gigawatts. So a replacement there. Thought it might be interesting to talk a little bit about some of the partnerships. We are always kind of working with companies and universities to meet their goals. So here are two examples of partnerships with universities. We've got one with Notre Dame University and Indiana Michigan Power, solar farm producing enough energy to power an average of 2,700 homes. Notre Dame is able to purchase 40% of the energy via clean energy credits to offset their carbon emissions and improve the quality of air in South Bend. And so that's a rather large project at 20 megawatts, and it's a 200-acre solar facility. Have Duke Energy Indiana partnering with Purdue University in Tippecanoe County with a solar farm at 10 acres, producing 1.6 megawatts, and that's enough to power 240 homes. Also thought it would be interesting to talk a little bit about electric vehicles. It's all over your TVs recently, and so thought we'd give some statistics about kind of what's going on in the Midwest. So this slide shows public charging stations as well as how many outlets are in each state, and for Indiana as well as our neighbors. So you can check out those figures as you would imagine. You know, each station has a number of outlets, so that number is always larger than the stations. And then on May 20th of this year, the Indiana Volkswagen Environmental Mitigation Trust Fund Committee selected the Indiana Utility Group, which is comprised of 8 Indiana utilities, including both IEA members as well as other utilities, to implement a statewide direct current fast charging program, DC Fast for short. And so the Indiana Utility Group will be installing charging stations at 61 locations across Indiana. Those locations have been announced with IDEM, and the grant is a total of $5.5 million and will increase the charging stations throughout Indiana. Expect that to be deployed in 2022 and 2023. Energy is also a topic that is not only on your TV screens and top of mind, but also being discussed at the Indiana General Assembly. So for the past 2 years, there was a 21st Century Energy Policy Development Task Force, and they concluded their findings in November of 2020. During the 2021 legislative session, there was a bill to create task force, what I call Task Force 2.0. And so on this screen, you'll see the membership of the second iteration of the task force. So, and they've had 3 meetings to date. They're expected to have 2 more meetings in October for the year 2021. And then this second task force will conclude their work in 2022 with a report due in the fall of 22, heading into the 2023 legislative session. So for the new task force, it's a 17-member task force. You've got 6 members from the Senate, 6 members from the House, 5 members appointed by the governor. You've got representation for consumers with the Office of Utility Consumer Counselor, the Indiana Finance Authority, a renewable energy expert, a generation transmission and distribution expert, and electric utility policy expert. To highlight some of the findings from the last report in November, to keep Indiana competitive in attracting and retaining certain businesses, that the state must encourage the deployment of renewable energy resources while not compromising reliability, affordability of the electric utility service. We know that this is of utmost importance to businesses as well as elected leaders. Another finding that widely varying local ordinances and tax structures are barriers to attracting renewable energy resource developments and projects to Indiana. That stable electric voltage and frequency are critical to advanced manufacturing businesses and technology-focused entities, and that there are many critical emerging energy issues that need to be addressed in more depth, such as transmission resources, market products, distribution resources, integration of DERs, such as rooftop solar on the electric grid, charging infrastructure for electric vehicles, and the potential of repurposing fossil fuel generation or fuel sites to replace lost jobs and tax revenues in those local communities. So this last bullet on this slide is really what Task Force 2.0 is taking up both this year and next year. They've had full day meetings, 3 of them thus far, and expect a continued robust discussion about energy policy here in Indiana and future legislation to address the needs. And since we're taping, I'm not available to take any of your questions. However, my contact information is below. Feel free to reach out to us at any time. Happy to answer your questions and field your inquiries as needed, and appreciate the opportunity to present to you today. Thank you.